How do? Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to King Bespoke Creations. So, you want to learn how to carve. Fantastic, because it's a brilliant thing. You can put it into anything. You might already be making bits of furniture, you might be making little trinket boxes, or you might not have done anything at all. Carving is a wonderful thing. It's a brilliant way to personalize anything that you make. So today, we're going to make that. A simple smiley face that's just carved into a block of wood. Very simple thing. Now, if you've watched my first video, then you'll know all about the two most important rules of carving. If you haven't, check the link down below and you can go and watch that. It's a 5-minute video, purposefully short and sweet, so you can go and get lots of practice. So today we're going to move on from those and we're going to implement those two rules into this nice smiley face. Look at that. It's cute, isn't it? And then we'll see how you can develop that into something else. Let's have a look. Right, so you've got your chunk of wood. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. And we're going to see if we can make one of these happy smiley emojis, okay? So we need something circular. So we've got a coffee lid at the minute. Place that on and just draw around that for now, and that can be the basis of your emoji. They're all kind of circular-ish, aren't they? Okay, so then you're going to draw whichever emoji face in there. Keep it simple to start with. Maybe not the crying one with the tiny tears on the edges, because that's going to get a bit complex. Then we need to decide how thick we want that carving to be. So how much do we want this edge to go down? Okay, so I'm going to go a random depth, about that. What's that? 1/4 inch? 7 or 8 mil, something like that. And just draw a line, just using your finger. Doesn't need to be super accurate. See, I've got a nasty knot. Just gets rid of that. So hopefully that should get rid of that nastiness. If it doesn't, we can always carve it a little bit more later. And just go all the way around. And if you've kept your finger still, they should reasonably line up at the end. Okay, so that's your pencil bit done for now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a little knife. Okay, so something like a Stanley knife, something that's reasonably sharp. Always being wary of your fingers. Okay, and we're going to very carefully scribe around. Doesn't need to be heavy pressure. We're going to try and scribe around that circle to create a score line. And can you see as I'm going around that I'm using fingers as anchors, holding the work steady, gripping with finger and thumb. There's no way I'm going to cut my fingers. And this anchor point just helps to keep everything steady as you go around. Okay, we've gone the full circle. Now you're going to do that quite a lot of times as we go around this, because what we're going to do is we're going to cut towards these lines in a cut to cut technique. So let's have a look what we mean about this cut to cut a little bit more. If we have the top of your piece of wood running across like that, when you put the first cut in, usually with your knife or the top end of the chisel perhaps, you create a cut in the grains that we talked about in that first video. Now those grains are going across like that. You putting that cut in there means that when you come in for the second cut, you come in with your chisel at this angle, you come down like that, and it stops there. It means that we get to cut downhill on this section, which removes this area, but leaves this sharp edge. If we didn't put that first cut in there, all these fibres would then chip away and you'd lose the bigger chunk than you wanted. So here we can see the chisel is cutting towards the knife edge cut. And you can see how actually even tapping it at the other end, it means that that cut stops. The fibres and that wood grain chips up only to the cut line and it flicks away easily. Another technique we can use is going back to that downhill technique again. This time we're going from a mix of holding the chisel sideways to go downhill round the circle and holding it flat to clean up the work. Notice I'm not using the full width of the chisel as I'm going round the circle. That's too many fibres, it's too much tension. So you can just chip away a little bit at a time, and that end section really wants tiny little bits doing. So here we are, face drawn on, but that's a really sharp edge around the circle, isn't it? We want to soften that up. Now what I'm doing here is just drawing arrows around the edges. Now that's not to make it look nice, that's to remind me which way to carve, to make sure I'm always carving downhill. So here we are, chiseling away, skimming that corner off, trying to round it over. Now it'd be very easy as I get into this and start going through to carry it round around the circle, but then I'd be carving uphill as I go round the corner. So those arrows are reminding me, stop, get to the other side and go through from the other. Once we've done that, we're back to knife scoring again. This time we're going to do the eyes and the mouth to have that cut to cut technique working for us again. And notice the little finger still working as an anchor point. Now carving around the eyes is a little bit trickier because there's tighter turns on there. So take your time, make sure we're not pushing too hard, and watch those thumbs. Too easy to slip. Right, so now we're using the chisel to cut to the cut line. Now there's a few different techniques. Notice here we're wiggling the butt end of the chisel to work it into the wood. We've already seen that we can tap the chisel into the wood. And here's a very useful technique, holding it right at the very end and slicing into the wood. This gives us brilliant control and we can take off tiny little whispers anytime we need to. Okay, so we've worked through both eyes and around the edge of the mouth using that standard cut to cut technique. Here I thought we'd add an extra little detail into the mouth. Put some lining in between the teeth. So again we're going back to a cut to cut technique. First working through with the knife, then going in with the chisel just as we've done before. However, we're trying to make a V cut in the centre here. So this step cut that we've got at the moment needs addressing. Now there's a few different ways we can do that. We can turn the chisel round and going from the other side, trying to match up where you place the chisel into the bottom of that cut line. The other way to do it is to come in with the chisel from the side point, scoring in with the chisel at an angle to create that groove, slicing from one side and then from the other. There you go, short and sweet, very simple to do. Now, obviously we don't have to stick with smiley faces. We can use the same techniques and make things just a little bit more tricky each time we do one. Carving is like entering a competition, and the winning prize is the item that you make. And it's a really good competition because the more times you enter, the better the prize gets. This is one of the first things I carved. This is a little Winnie the Pooh jewellery box. Now I made this many years ago for my wife. For our first Christmas before we were married, we were only just starting to go out to be dating. And I thought I'd make something personal. It always goes down well, that. So I made the Winnie the Pooh box. Now, if we have a close-up look at it, there's little tool marks and things in there. I like it. It's good. I wasn't brilliantly experienced then. And why are the tool marks there? And why maybe you getting tool marks when you do chiseling? Well, if you're using that simple flat chisel, it's very, very difficult not to catch the edge, the corners of the chisel while you're working it around your piece. So we might need to move on to using some proper wood carving chisels. Something like these. So you can see these chisels are rounded over, far less likely to catch the corners. And then we've got V-shapes, gouges, and half circles to make different lines. Now, if you're looking to upgrade to some carving chisels, I would highly recommend these Swiss made. They're absolutely superb. You don't need a lot to get going, okay? I would recommend 3 to begin with. If you want to go more than that, great, but they're not all that cheap. I would recommend the 5/8, okay? This is a fairly narrow, gentle swoop that is very, very, very useful. And because it curves up at the edges, it doesn't dig in to the corners of the wood as easily as a flat chisel does. Something that goes a little bit more extreme than that is the semi-hollow. Look at that, okay? Now that is a 9/5, okay? Now we'll go through what those mean later on, but for now, you can look for one of those. And I would go with a V carving chisel. That point at the bottom is very useful for getting a sharp edge on things, but it still keeps these top edges away when we're looking. And that is a 12/6. Now I'll put those 3 chisels and a few more, maybe a box set if somebody's looking for a gift. Very nice. I'll put a link down to those from an Amazon link. It's just an affiliate link to me. Everything looks the same price to you, but I get an extra little bit of pocket money so I can keep making these videos for you guys. So once you've mastered some of those techniques, and maybe you've invested in some different types of chisels, different shapes and sizes, the world is your oyster. You can take those 2 simple rules that we've used and carve anything. My personal thing is carving guitars. So if we have a look at this one, we can see that there's a few different carves on here. There's a score line all the way around the front. There's the deep relief carving that's the main focus. And we also have an edge detail carve that's a little bit lighter, just to give a really nice edge into the guitar. If you could click like, subscribe and ring that little bell on the end, because we love that little bell, and make some comments down below as well. What would you like to carve? What would you put some carving into? So go and sharpen your tools, and we'll see you soon.